Hi, I'm Patrick Hopper, and together with
Barbara Quinlan,
we are the
embedded marketers.
yeah. So Barb, this week has been really crazy. I've been totally getting Zoom fatigue. Tons of meetings every day. I see kids, I see dogs, I see even somebody eating lunch in the middle of a Zoom meeting. And I'll tell you, this COVID period is crazy.
I'm ready for
But
it then.
this week on Embedded Marketers, our guest is Rich Nass, and he's our EVP of editorial at Embedded Computing Design. And he's been doing something really cool to address COVID-19 with executives in the electronic space. So Rich, can you kind of tell us a little bit about what we're doing? And then we're going to just talk a little bit more about some of the tips and tricks that they've learned or we've learned from listening to them.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Pat. As you probably know, I do a weekly podcast with executives in our space called Embedded Executives, and we talk about whatever happens to be timely. Since the beginning of this pandemic, I started doing much more frequent interviews with some of these executives to talk through with them what they're doing with their engineering staffs while we're going through this pandemic, and see if we can find some best practices, some tips, some things we could do to help other engineers get their jobs done.
And it's been an impressive list. We've had Stefan Skarin with IAR, Thomas Fowler with Silicon Labs, Anthony Ambrose from Data.io, John Millos from Sendine, Todd DeBonis with Pixelworks. So what I thought here we do today is just give a synopsis of some of the key highlights to help us get through this time. So Rich, off to you first about what you learned from talking to the executives.
Yep. Yeah, actually, I'd like to talk about two examples, and they're at opposite extremes. Everybody's obviously feeling the pain with what we're going through, but in different ways. So I'll start with the folks in Sweden at IAR Systems. They are not seeing nearly as many infections as some other places, and they worked in the office through most of this. They allowed the employees to work from home if necessary, but for the most part, they were in the office right through. So they weren't feeling it nearly as much as people like the folks at Sendine who are in New York City. It doesn't get much worse than what they're seeing there. When I spoke to John Millos, who's the CEO there, he said that he would walk down the street in New York City and he'd be by himself, which, as you know, is just
Really
weird.
crazy.
You know, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So they have people who, they're not bringing people into the office unless absolutely necessary. If they do, they come in one at a time and they have to go through the whole sanitize everything. And it's just different. And of course, everybody's doing all the video stuff that you talked about.
Mm-hmm. One of the ones I found interesting was Thomas Fowler, VP of Engineering at Silicon Labs. And what he said is they really learned a lot about families during this time and being on Zoom calls and Microsoft team meetings, that, you know, you see your kids running around, you see a dog, and you're really connecting with people at a much different level than being in the office. They're also practicing social distancing, dedicated work spaces, and even a COVID response team for everybody who's coming into the office and working from home and keeping everybody safe. Barb, how about you?
Yeah, so Anthony Ambrose from Data.io was sharing that, you know, they're a global company. So they already had all the communication tools and infrastructure in place to work remotely. And because their Shanghai facility which was at the forefront of COVID-19, because of that, they were able to get best practices from all the lessons they learned from that location when it reopened back in February. So because of that, they really were concentrating on the top priority for them was keep their people and families safe, keep their facility safe, and deliver to the customer. So they did have to make some minor tweaks, like letting their engineers take equipment home and making sure that they're working are at the same hours. But all in all, they've been able to maintain delivering and satisfying their customers along the way.
Well, good. Those are our tips for this week's Embedded Marketers. Thank you for joining us. We're going to, in the links below, we're going to include all of the executive interviews so you guys can listen to them and watch them. They're really insightful. And anything, if you want to see any topic covered, please feel free to reach out to Barbara or myself. And be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.